watch this episode, and all I can think is, Freddie from iCarly? Welcome back to Rebels Revisited. I really am never going to get over the fact that Nathan Kress voices Wedge Antilles in Rebels. Like, I'm never gonna get over it. Since when was Rebels my entire childhood? Like, we have Dante Basco voicing Jai Kell. Now we have Nathan Kress voicing Wedge Antilles. We love to see it. We love to see it. Alright, so let's get started with the episode. This is the Antilles Extraction Revisited. So the episode starts out with the rebels attempting a supply run that unfortunately gets stopped by the Empire. We get some space battle action, and the rebels just completely fail. Their fleet gets wiped out, and the transport does too. It was pretty brutal, can't lie. Transport was not even armed, and everyone on the crew still died anyway. You know, with these like space scenes, Rebels kind of like goes hard, sort of. They really let the Imperials be brutal in these space battles, and we're always looking inside the cockpits and seeing like the pilots like screaming as everything malfunctions and they die. And now we see the same thing happening with an unarmed supply transport. It's very season 3 of them. Season 3, I feel like, is notably more brutal and like noticeably more violent, which definitely makes sense for the trajectory of the series because, again, Twilight of the Apprentice, turning point. Things naturally have a darker tone now because our characters are dealing with darker things now, and the characters are the heart of the show, and you know what's going on with the characters just has to affect the show as the whole. So it makes sense for things to be kind of taking on this different, darker tone. Not that the show is dark, because I don't think Rebels is ever like dark at its core. I don't think it is ever dark, but more darkness is introduced, and it's just very season 3. It's very season 3 of them. Then we catch up with the Ghost crew and Commander Sato, and they are concerned about the loss of even more pilots because, like, my god, they actually do lose so many pilots. Like, I feel like the opening of like every other episode is just like a bunch of pilots dying. But luckily, there are some cadets at Skystrike Academy who are looking to defect to the rebellion. They got this news from a mysterious Fulcrum agent, so this is where we got the confirmation that there can be multiple Fulcrum agents, so hello Cassian Andor. Now, at the time, we did not know who this mysterious Fulcrum agent was. Now we know that it's Callus, and like, watching it back now, it was so obvious. Like, listen to a clip.
There are Imperial cadets at the Skystrike Academy who wish to defect to the rebels. I do not know their names, but they will require some assistance to escape.
The voice may be distorted, but similarly to when we heard Ahsoka's Fulcrum transmissions, you can tell just from the inflection that this is David Oyelowo, the same way that you could tell that it was Ashley Eckstein, and I think it's so funny that like I didn't catch it the first time around because now it's so obvious. They keep falling out. And now we really get into the premise of the episode, which is Sabine is going to go on a mission undercover into Skystrike Academy to extract these wannabe rebel pilots. And something that the episode like never really gets into, but that I always wonder about is like, how did that feel to her? Because she has trauma linked to the Academy, like, for sure. And we never really like get into the more like psychological side of this in this episode, but I always wonder, like, her having to like put the uniform back on and play along with their game even for just a little bit, and even just to be back in the environment again. Like, what did it feel like? What was like going through her head? I always wonder about that. Ezra has some objections to this mission because he thinks he should be the one going undercover, given that he's done it before. Obviously, Sabine is the right choice because she actually went to the academy, so she would really know what she's doing here. But Ezra Ezra doesn't want to see her in danger. Ezra wants to be in control of the situation, but he has to sit this one out and just kind of be a shadow along with Kanan and just stay on comms, listen for if she's in trouble, and he can't do anything except for sit there and wait for Sabine to contact them. And he's so nervous. He's so nervous for Sabine, and I love those scenes where he's with Kanan and they're just there waiting and Ezra's freaking out and Kanan's just like, Ezra, you just have to wait. There's nothing you can do, because it is like breaking ranks, but Ezra is not in the same role that he was in before. In Breaking Ranks, Kanan was the one who was like, I don't like Ezra being on this undercover mission, I'm so nervous. And Hera was the one who was like, Kanan, you just need to let him do this thing and chill out. And now Ezra is the one who was like, I should be the one on this mission. Sabine is in danger. I should be doing this. And Kanan is like, Ezra, you need to calm down. And I think it's fun how there's all this like role reversal going on, and there's characters taking on like different roles than what they were doing in season 1, and I love that. I love that we kind of get to see similar situations but with different dynamics. And there's one really great quote that happens in one of these scenes, not in the beginning of the episode, later in the episode, where Kanan says to Ezra, part of a Jedi's wisdom comes from learning to accept when a situation is out of our control. So wise of him, so wise of him. He's so wise now that it's season 3. It's very season 3 Kanan of him to say that. That's so different than who he was before, you know? Being able to say, like, learning to accept when a situation is out of our control, because again, in season 1, when Ezra was in Sabine's position, he was freaking out like Ezra was. We love the growth. We love the growth. We love to see it. Oh, I forgot to take this off. So over to Sky Strike. Sky Strike Academy is so pretty. I feel like that's such an iconic visual from the show. Even though this isn't like necessarily an iconic episode, like that image was just so striking and so beautiful that it's like, I feel like I see it all the time. And now we finally get to meet Wedge and Antilles. It's so exciting. I think that this is such a cool thing that Rebels has the ability to do. Like, we can see side characters who maybe like weren't so important in the movies, and now they get to be brought back and they get to be fleshed out a little bit. And Wedge was such a perfect person to focus on in this episode because he was not huge in the movies, but as fans, we kind of latched on to him a little bit, and now he's a little bit more important because of us, I feel like. I'll be honest, I don't really know the history of Wedge Antilles and how, like, was it like a Legends thing? Did a writer like decide to expand on him in Legends and then everyone decided to like him, or did we just randomly latch on to him after he was like in the movie? I don't actually know. I don't really know how that came about, but it came about. And I think it's cool now that we get in canon this expansion on Wedge, and we get an origin story with him, and we get to see him like in the academy. We get to actually see him defect. I think it's so cool. And Hobby's in this episode too, so he was a very minor character in the movies.
Fighters against a Star Destroyer?
We really did not see too much of him, and most people wouldn't even know that he has a name. And we get to see him in like a bigger role in this episode, so I just think it's so much fun that Rebels has the ability to do that. So this episode, there are important things in this episode, like obviously in the timeline of Star Wars as a whole, Wedge joins the rebellion, so that's important, but of course we already knew he was in the rebellion, so for us that's not new information, but in the timeline that's important. We get like a little bit of insight into Kallus. At the time it was a little bit misleading because there was a plot twist coming that we didn't know about, but that was important. But I think the thing that's really important about this episode as far as the story of Rebels is concerned is that it's putting Sabine in like the main character role here, and she's never really gotten to be in that role. She's never got to be a lead on her own. She's always been teamed up with someone else. Like in Out of Darkness, she was teamed up with Hera. In Blood Sisters, even though that was very centered on like her and her past, she was teamed up with Ezra. And then again, in Protector of Concord Dawn, that was focused on her, but not focused on just her. She was teamed up with Kanan. Now she gets to lead the mission. She does not have any partners. It's just her in this lead role in the episode. And that's something really important to give her here at the beginning of season 3, because she's going to be so central to what ends up happening in season 3, because obviously she's at the center of the Mandalore arc, which is such a huge part of this season. So I really like that they're kind of setting her up to take on more responsibility in the narrative. And I think that that's really the purpose that this episode serves. It also serves to give Price a comeback. My least favorite person in the galaxy. This is the Governor Price hate club. All my homies hate Governor Price. I mean, she's the worst. She's terrible. She basically kills a child. That, like, the thing with where they, like, made the ties, like, malfunction. They, like, rigged the ties so that they could malfunction, like, at the press of a button. And then she was like, shoot one of them down. And, like, literally just had this actual child just, like, killed. We love that. And then she was, like, with absolutely, like, no second thought. She's just like, what if I torture children? She's the worst. She's awful. She's terrible. I feel like she enjoys torturing people, like, just a little bit too much. I don't think we don't see it, like, that much, but, like, when we do, like, okay, like, in season 4, she, like, don't tell me she didn't enjoy torturing Hera. Don't tell me she didn't enjoy it. And here, she was just, like, right away, she, like, breaks out the interrogation chair, and she's just so excited about it. She's like, haha, look at my interrogation chair. Anyway, I hate her. I don't like Governor Price. Luckily, Sabine beats her up. Actually, I really like that fight because it's just very grounded. It's just very, like, you know what? They're going at it. We don't have any fancy laser swords. We don't have any blasters. They're just roughing it out. It's really the choreography is kind of brutal. You really, like, hear the sound effects of, like, the punches, and it just is kind of a more realistic fight than what we're used to, not just in Star Wars, but, like, on this show specifically. This is a very, like, fantasy violence kind of show, but that was not a very fantasy violence kind of fight. They just kind of got, like, down and dirty and went at it. It didn't last for very long, but it was still, like, a cool moment between these two women just going wild, just getting into a fight. And we love to see Governor Price getting a taste of her own medicine and getting electrocuted. Love to see it. Thank you so much, Sabine. I owe you everything. So one of the last things of note that happens in this episode is that Kallus helps Sabine and Wedge and Hobby escape. That was very interesting back in the day, because we were like, oh, is that character development for Kallus? We were like, maybe he's, like, turning good. And we were also probably thinking, oh, well, that's interesting that it seems like he's turning good, but he's not just going completely good right off the bat. He's just helping them, but he's hesitant to defect from the Empire. And it's like, we were thinking all those things, and the whole time, he was Fulcrum. That's really funny to me in retrospect, just thinking about, you know, just thinking about the way that I watched this the first time, and then the way that I watch it now, knowing that he was Fulcrum. It really does give you, like, a different perspective on not only just what's going on in the episode, but just Kallus's arc in general. It went faster than we really thought it did, because at this point, he was already on our side. We didn't even know. We think that there's all this, like, character development happening, but, like, a ton of character development already happened that we just didn't see. You know, between the honorable ones and now, total switch. He's working for the rebellion. And there's definitely a lot that we didn't see with Kallus, and I kind of like it that way. I kind of like it being left up to the imagination as to what was happening internally and how he got involved with the rebellion and things like that. You know, we're not going to find out for a hot second that he's Fulcrum, but, you know, having already watched it, we all know that he's Fulcrum here. And I think it's cool to watch it with that new lens. If they ever want to tell that story with Kallus, you know, if they ever want to backtrack a little bit and tell the story of how he got involved as Fulcrum and got involved in the rebellion, then I'd be down to see it, but I do kind of like the mystery surrounding it. And of course, watching it for the first time through, that reveal that he's Fulcrum is like unparalleled. I would not trade that for anything. And then, finally, Wedge and Hobby join the rebellion. This is just such a cool moment. Like, we get to see Wedge Antilles join the rebellion, and Rebels is just so cool for that we get to see that happen. So this is a fun episode. This is just, it's such a fun little 20 minutes of time. It's always good to get a glimpse inside the Empire, even though I guess we see it like relatively often. But I don't mind it. I don't mind the Empire infiltration stories. I always find them pretty interesting. I always like to see the way the Empire functions, especially in a show or a story that's focused on whatever sort of rebellion or resistance is happening in the galaxy. I always like to see the way that the Empire or First Order or whatever is different from the heroes. We didn't see it a lot in this episode, but even with what we saw in this episode, it's a pretty clear difference, because there was that Imperial officer when Sabine was kind of first in there as a cadet getting ready to train. There was that one officer who was talking about like a spirit of competition and about rising in the ranks and about being the best, and we know that that's not how the rebellion functions. And also Price ordering for a child to be killed. That would not happen in the rebellion, probably. Maybe there are some rebels who would do that, but I don't think, in general, I don't think the rebellion works like that. So whether it's an episode like this, or an episode like Breaking Ranks, or if we're looking at Resistance, an episode like Live Fire, I always think that it's interesting to see these rebellion, Empire, or, you know, Resistance, First Order side-by-side stories. I think they're interesting. I think this is a fun episode, and of course I love seeing Sabine in the spotlight. That is what I've got for this one. So thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you always.